On this channel, we often talk as a fact that Ukraine actually could have won this war in 2022, 2023, and we had a real opportunity and strategic advantage on the battlefield at the end of 2022, and that United States and Western allies actually stopped helping Ukraine as soon as they seen the opportunity for Ukraine to win. And we always talk about it as a fact, but we never show the evidence. And we found this article from 6 months ago, I guess, which we didn't read for some reason because we don't like this stuff. But it's really awkward, right, Melania?
It's not just awkward. It's in the saddest way possible. Most hilarious. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't for all these dead Ukrainians that, died because of what's written in this article. It's sometimes, it seems like we live in this crazy world where people say things for no reason and make political decisions based on nothing. Well, this article we found literally kind of, I think, admits to the fact that certain actions were taken because of nothing. And because of that, very many people died. And the only thing we can hope for in this situation at this point is that somebody, learns from those mistakes, ? I don't know. It seems like it's not working anymore, but at least maybe we can look back at, these things and maybe somebody will think, maybe we shouldn't do that again. Maybe we should take a different approach. Before we proceed talking about this article, I'm going to put this in the very beginning. First, for more content like this, please subscribe to this channel. Please do it right now. Please share this video with your friends, even though you don't know what we're going to be talking about yet, but believe me,
it's going to be
really
exciting.
Good.
Yeah,
it's really good. And please leave a comment under this video and give us your thoughts about the topic we are to discuss today. So yeah, the article is called Biden's Armageddon Moment, when the nuclear detonation seemed possible in Ukraine.
Do you remember when nuclear detonation seemed possible in Ukraine? Because I don't recall this moment, actually.
Yeah, that's the point. This has been everywhere all the time in Ukraine. Every single living day, something about nuclear destruction, nuclear warheads, nuclear detonation. We never saw it coming. It was never directly addressed by, anybody that was, worth listening to in that regard. It was always the Jake Sullivans of the world who were like, ooh, in case Ukraine takes over this piece of land, they're going to nuke Kyiv. Or, ooh, if we give them jets and F-16s, the nuclear warhead's going to drop on Paris or Washington or whatever. Ooh, if we give Ukraine Patriots. Ooh, if we do this. Ooh, then put... And, it's been 2.5 years now. And fortunately, nothing fucking happened. Yeah? But,
Yeah, but it stalled the assistance. It draw numerous red lines for Ukraine. It stalled the assistance to the point where Ukraine is now losing continuously. If like a year ago we were continuously gaining something or losing just a little, now we're losing a lot, and we still have lots of red lines for us. And nobody seems to be able to explain, right? We see these Pentagon briefings, we see these interviews where the people who are responsible for this policy are asked, why don't you give Ukraine permission to strike Russian targets with American weapons? Ukrainians already occupied part of Russian territory. It's the escalation is not happening, and they don't have an answer, and they start lying. Actually, they start coming up with some excuses like, oh, this won't actually help Ukraine, so we won't do that. It's like, who
as
are
if
you
they
to...
know.
Yeah.
So this article is describing a few weeks of October 2022, so a long time ago, when the White House was consumed in a crisis whose depths were not publicly acknowledged at the time. It was a glimpse of what seemed like a terrifying new era. Well, Mr. David Sanger, who is a White House and national security reporter and the author of very famous books about wars and Cold War and whatnot, he wrote this piece about how on October 6, 2022, the administration, Mr. Biden and the bunch, heard a disturbing message. It came straight from highly classified intercepted communications that the president was recently briefed about, suggesting that President Putin and his threats to use nuclear weapon in Ukraine might be turning into operational plan. Mark, what do you? And let's stop at that for 1 second. How do you imagine this?
From as I understand, they were listening to Russian generals, right? They were all in their communications, and so some Russian generals like Ivan. So have you beaten your wife yesterday? Oh yes. By the way, can you imagine how nuclear weapon would detonate in some field in Ukraine? Oh yes, Vladimir.
Yeah, talking to a president. Come on, Vladimir.
I mean, like, what was that? It's not even.
Yeah, I don't think that's how it works. But what happened was, I mean, you're not that far off. According to the author of this article, these intercepts, these highly secretive intercepts, revealed that for the first time since the war in Ukraine had broken out, there were frequent conversations within the Russian military about reaching into the nuclear arsenal. Some were just, quote unquote, various forms of chatter, and we're going to come back to that phrasing, various forms of chatter, one official said, but others involved the units that would be responsible for moving or deploying the weapons. The most alarming of the intercepts revealed that one of the most senior Russian military commanders was explicitly discussing the logistics of detonating a weapon on the battlefield. So you're not wrong. Why are we even talking about this today? Because a very famous Ukrainian military analyst, Mr. Mykola Belyaskov, wrote about this article, a teeny tiny short tweet that made perfect sense. He says that Russians knew perfectly well that their communications have been monitored by US, so they used vague talk of transferring some nukes to influence Biden administration decision making in favorable way by exploiting escalation management considerations. Predictable opponent equals suitable opponent. Now, the only thing I want to know,
it's obvious. Putin obviously knew his communications were compromised because he knew that Americans knew every his step in February 2022, right?
Of course. So again, yes, this is not speculation. It is, for at this point in time, a fact as of after 24th of February 2022. The fact that, it was admitted to the whole world that Americans were listening to the secret communications and not secret communications of everybody senior in Russia. Presidents, generals, I don't know, special officers, I don't care. The point is, they knew the attack was imminent. They told our president, they told our media. Everybody was talking about this for a month up to the full-scale invasion. So obviously Russians knew that they're listened to. So, given the fact that they knew they were listened to, I would like to know what it means, various forms of chatter. Like, just, what do you mean chatter? Like gossip? Like, do you think this is how, we usually...
Do you think this is how nuclear weapons deployed, by chatter?
Yeah, I don't know how is this, but they admit, they use the word chatter, and then they say that some senior Russian military commander was explicitly discussing the logistics of detonating a weapon on the battlefield. Was it an order or was it just a theoretical drunk babbling? Like, I don't. This?
At that time, since 2022 or maybe even 2021, when everyone started discussing this, everyone was discussing all the time on every forums, in Twitter, etc., how nuclear war would occur, how Russia could actually use nuclear weapons, what are tactical nuclear weapons, what are strategical nuclear weapons, is there difference, etc., etc. So that's something everyone was talking about all the time until now. And now is talking about.
Even it's not including on Discord servers.
On Discord servers.
No, but
exactly.
People talk about things, but nevertheless, the Biden administration took this thing seriously. In the next sentence, though, they admit that fortunately Mr. Biden was told in his briefings there was no evidence of weapons being moved, but soon the CIA was warning that under a singular scenario in which Ukrainian forces decimated Russian defensive lines and looked at as if they might try to retake Crimea, a possibility that seemed imaginable at that fall, the likelihood of nuclear use might rise to 50% or even higher. So, no evidence, zero evidence, nada, no, zero, no evidence.
do you understand the sentence afterwards, this thing which Burns told, is basically admitting that, yes, we cannot let Ukraine win because otherwise we think there's 50% chance
or
that
even
Russia,
higher.
or even higher, and whatever
51.
our methodology of that. I mean, what the fuck is 50%? And he says after, that's why we cannot let Ukraine win. If Ukraine wins, and they thought, Ukraine has a chance to win in October 2022. If Ukraine wins.
They saw it, they knew it, that it was possible, and based on various forms of chatter, they intercepted from an enemy who knew they were listened to. They made a political decision to stall aid for Ukraine.
Again, by the way, good point. So they put more chances to Ukraine breaking through defensive lines and decimating Russian army on Ukrainian territory, despite telling us all this time that we cannot win Russian army. They knew that we can, like Ukrainians can do that.
We could do it, but they told us we couldn't.
And they decided to put a valve back with dripping ammunition, etc., etc.
I want to address the 50% thing because, again, they say that likelihood of nuclear use might rise to 50% or even higher. And then in the next sentence, they go, no one knew how to assess the accuracy of that estimate. The factors that play into decisions to use nuclear weapons or even to threaten their use were too abstract, too dependent on human emotion accident to measure with precision. Nevertheless, they decided to take it seriously, and they decided to use the 50% taken out of nowhere. And Mark Milley actually admitted, and he said that the more successful the Ukrainians are at ousting the Russian invasion, the more likely Putin is to threaten to use a bomb or reach for it.
To threaten, not to use. Which is good point. Thanks. Maybe he's more inclined to threaten because apparently it fucking works.
And then again, so at this point we find ourselves in a situation when apparently we can see that Ukraine can never win. Because if Ukraine wins, then there's nuclear holocaust. It doesn't matter when Ukraine wins or under which condition. The point is, if Ukraine wins, then there's nuclear Armageddon.
Yeah, so what's the strategy here? What's the point of it, right? So if you decided that Ukraine cannot win, what did you decide then? Did you decide like anything? What's that? Now it looks actually more logical, right? All the sabotage. Like, do you remember the famous offensive of Ukraine counteroffensive of 2023 when they put all the Ukrainian plans to the media? They leaked it to the media when Ukraine actually didn't get all the weapons which were pledged by allies, not only by the time, but several months later of the planned date. So Ukraine planned the counteroffensive to start on spring 2023, then summer 2023. Then it appeared nobody even sent tanks or something. Tanks weren't sent. And then Russians knew exactly where Ukraine will start the offensive. Russians blew up the dam and actually committed ecocide in Ukraine. And then there were reports with leaks from Pentagon officials complaining that Ukrainians are too careful in terms of their manpower and don't want to lose a lot of manpower, and that's why they are not successful on the battlefield. That's what they said.
Yeah. So not obvious at all, just sabotage and lies all over. And you know what? Another thing that is very important to address, again, in this article, is that this article admits, even though it's half a year old, It says that since then, the battlefield advantage has changed dramatically, and October 2022 now looks like the high watermark of Ukraine's military performance over the past 2 years. Yet Mr. Putin has now made a new set of nuclear threats during his equivalent of the State of the Union address in Moscow in late February. He said that any NATO countries that were helping Ukraine strike Russian territory with cruise missiles, or that might consider sending their own troops into battle, must in the end understand that all this truly threatens the conflict with the use of nuclear weapons and therefore the destruction of civilization.
Wait, Mark Milley was wrong?
Impossible.
Is it even possible?
The point is that
the amount of threats is not proportional to Ukrainian success on the battlefield, right?
It doesn't. I mean, even if it was, imagine if there was such a thing where there was a correlation between a Ukrainian success and Russians using nuclear weapons. I mean, Ukraine is not successful, and Mr. Putin is like, hey, this shit fucking works. Every time I tell them, or there's some indistinct chatter about me using nuclear weapons, I mean, shit's just like not working. They're not sending stuff. So like, I should be just saying this all the time. And he does. And nothing happens. And I mean, this works. It works. That's it. They don't have to use nuclear weapons. They just have to say they will use nuclear weapons. And just nobody will do anything because everybody's so scared. And then something else that is very important to understand for everybody in Europe, by the way, guys, hi, if you're watching us, please subscribe. Also, check it out. Something that is also written in this article is that because of this whole chatter, somebody said something about nuclear weapon on somebody's phone somewhere in Russia. The White House was so concerned that they had a task force that they met that to map out the response. And administration's officials said that the United States countermove would have to be non-nuclear. But they quickly added that there would have to be some kind of dramatic reaction, perhaps even a conventional attack on the units that had launched the nuclear weapons, or they would risk emboldening not only Mr. Putin, but every other authoritarian with a nuclear arsenal, large or small.
Units, you say. Units which launched.
Yeah. I mean, how are you going to strike a tactical jet carrying a nuclear bomb if you're not even allowing us to strike? But screw that. So if you're afraid of nuclear escalation, I mean, Ukraine is literally in Europe. So everybody in Europe should know that if Russia were to strike Ukrainian territory with a nuclear weapon, so a nuke actually explodes on the European soil near the, let's say 500 kilometers away from a Polish border or 1,000 kilometers away. I mean, Kiev is roughly 1,000 kilometers away from Polish border, right? There would be no matchable kind of counterattack. So he can literally do what, I mean, they literally say here that he can actually do it and nothing is going to happen. I mean, literally, like units, like will conventional attack on the unit that had launched the nuclear weapon. A jet somewhere in Savasleika. What is this?
I mean, I have no words. I mean, I thought they were actually saying, telling Putin that they will organize, attack on him personally, right? Because that would make sense. If Putin decided to use nuclear weapons and he becomes a target and, for instance, he gets eliminated, like Nasrallah in Lebanon, right? Like that makes sense. You decide to use nuclear weapons.
They found him, they killed him. That's it.
Yeah. Saddam Hussein. That makes sense. Someone decides to use nuclear weapons or to do some terror attacks or something like that, you kill him. You get killed for deciding to use nuclear weapons. That sounds like nuclear deterrence, right? Not nukes for nukes. We don't want that. But nukes for personal assassination, personal attack. That makes sense. But the unit, it just sounds like, I mean, Putin
doesn't care about the unit.
Just slaughtered several hundred thousands of his units like that.
He doesn't care about one unit that dropped the bombs on some Kharkiv or something.
Yeah,
Ukraine
already destroyed several planes which can carry nukes or something like that. Ukraine destroyed Russian reserves of rockets and
So yeah, because of that chatter, and this article lists a long list of speculations what a nuclear threat from Russia might look like, starting from like dirty bomb and ending with like tactical nuclear weapon. I mean, unfounded, based on chatter, right? Because of that, they had to call, Blinken had to call his Russian counterpart. Lloyd Austin and Sullivan had to call somebody in Russia. Olaf Scholz went to Beijing to ask Xi to call Putin, to ask him not to do it, under pretense of some intercept. No evidence. They made this whole fucking deal. And they were so panicked. I mean, they literally overreacted. I mean, I don't want to gaslight them, but this is not gaslighting. Like, you literally made this yourself. And you know how I know it? It was, they kind of made it themselves. So they decided to actually talk, one-on-one, Biden's representative with Putin's representative. And Biden chose William Burns, the CIA director, and Putin chose Sergei Naryshkin. He's head of the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. And so, I mean, this last paragraph in this article, it made me cringe so hard. So Mr. Burns told this reporter that they saw each other in mid-November in 2022. And it says in this article publicly, and I don't see Mr. Burns like writing anything to deny it. I mean, it's obviously an interview, right? It's quoting people. It's not anonymous sources. It's like person who was there. But it says, but while Mr. Burns arrived to warn what would befall Russia if it used nuclear weapon, Mr. Naryshkin apparently thought the CIA director had been sent to negotiate an armistice agreement that would end the war. He told Mr. Burns that any such negotiation had to begin with understanding that Russia would get to keep any land that was currently under its control. So these fucking guys in the White House, they're like, Jesus Christ, the nuclear attack is imminent. We should talk to Russians. Hello, Russians, we need to meet you. Russians like, okay, sure, I'll show up. Then fucking Naryshkin shows up. And he is sure that they're going to talk about a completely different thing. So he wasn't even, I mean, I guess he was surprised. It took some time, and I quote, for Mr. Burns to disabuse Mr. Naryshkin of the idea that the United States was ready to trade away Ukrainian territory for peace. Finally, they turned to the topic Mr. Burns had traveled around the world to discuss, what the United States and its allies were prepared to do if Mr. Putin made good on his nuclear threats. And Naryshkin swore, and I quote Mr. Burns, the CIA director, Naryshkin swore that he understood and that Putin did not intend to use a nuclear weapon.
That's literally the meme from The Office, right? When the Michael Scott handshakes the manager, right?
Yeah.
It's like this literally thing. The Naryshkin in funny clothing, and he's like, yeah, we won't use nuclear weapons, and William Burns like that. Yeah, I just prevented nuclear Armageddon. Yeah, give me a fucking medal, right?
It would be hilarious if it wasn't for the deaths of thousands of Ukrainians because of this, I'm sorry, misunderstanding. I mean, I'm not denying the fact that Russians are evil and Russians would do anything they want. And I'm not excluding the possibility of one day Russians deciding out of the blue to do it, but people would know. And then I don't think you could do anything if Russia decided that they were going to do nuclear holocaust in Ukraine. It's not but this article, it's really short and it's kind of old, but it's mind-boggling. You know what it reminds me of, Mark? This is the definition of what myself personally and also Jake Sullivan were taught when we were studying philosophy in universities. You know how Plato made up this allegory of a cave where people sit in the cave facing the back of the cave and they observe the shadows of the things that happen outside? This is literally how this administration's, and actually, I don't know, just American foreign policy tradition is like, where you hear about a gossip, about a thing that somebody says on the phone somewhere, and you make a geopolitical decision based on that. And then when you actually show up to the place and see a person eye to eye and actually are like, look at me, all prepared to discuss nuclear escalation with you, the person's like, I'm sorry, I don't defend Russians, but like, what nuclear escalation? We were not trying to. We just want the territory. Did you not want to talk about us keeping the Ukrainian territory? Like, this is just, it's horrible. And then nobody learned any lessons from that. Literally nobody. And now Ukraine is actually, in comparison back to then, Ukraine is actually losing ground. Ukraine is actually, I mean, not losing the war, but we are in a tough place right now. And still, I mean, I guess this is what they wanted. I mean, this is how Ukraine. This is how you not do a nuclear holocaust. I guess. I
want from this, like, we had every time Zelensky goes to Washington, every time there's something big happening, we get these numerous articles from Financial Times, Economist, Time, whatever, about the darkest hour Ukraine is facing, or something like that, about how Ukraine is doomed, how everything is going to hell, how battleground, Ukraine has no successes in battleground for a long time. Never they use the explanation for that, right? Ukraine is in disadvantage on the battleground only because the West, the United States of America, and European allies didn't help Ukraine to retain the initiative in 2022. After that, when Ukraine started to prepare for counteroffensive, the arms were delayed intentionally because everyone was just trying to give themselves a medal for preventing nuclear holocaust or whatever, and made possible for Russians to build the trenches, build several lines of defense all around the front line, and then made impossible to penetrate them. And even after Ukraine failed in this counteroffensive, and every Western politician is like, "Ha! You cannot fight. You don't know how to do war stuff, right, Ukrainians?" And Ukrainians like, "Holy shit, man! Give me F-16 or something like that. I need attack systems. I need rockets. We couldn't fight like that. We could not fight with automat Kalashnikovs, right? It's crazy. We need arms. We need shells." And then United States and Europe like, yeah, shells. We didn't start production yet. Sorry. And Ukraine's like, what the fuck, man? It's been 2 years. Where's your production of shells? You understand this is a huge war. This is like World War II war. And they're like, we have some problems, mate. And after that, we have this journalist saying, you know what? Ukrainians actually cannot defeat Russia in this war. They are not capable. It's not Ukrainians.
No, it's not Ukrainians, actually, unfortunately. Yeah. I wish this article never, I mean, I wish I never stumbled upon it.
Yeah. I wish I never knew. But now I wish that every historian who's writing a book about this war, every historian who's writing something about this war, read this article and put it there and and see through the prism of this article the American decision-making process, and how this decision-making process actually killed thousands and thousands of Ukrainians, including my friends, including Melania's friends, including parents, children in their own houses, sleeping in their own beds, how their decision-making actually made the whole world much more dangerous, and how their decision-making actually escalated every conflict on this planet. And it's like, it's 2024 right now. Maybe you will watch this video in 2025 and God knows where it will, inflate again.
And
Jesus.
You know what? Like, we're almost in the election. Oh God, United States elections is like right here, right now. And I have zero hopes at this point. I mean, the only thing I can say is like, I wish something changes, like something has to change about this whole process, because it's not, dudes, that's not how it's going to go. Whoever, I mean, I have zero expectations for Trump's national security advisors or foreign relations advisors, because damn, these guys.
It can always get worse.
Yeah.
It can always get worse.
Actually, the only good thing that I can say about Trump's team, and I have to compliment, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Mr. J.D. Vance, who decided not to say anything about Ukraine in his debate, which is thank you guys. This is actually for the first time ever. To
the moderators, Jade Vance, Tim Walz, thank you guys.
Thank you guys for not saying
because
anything
Ukraine
about
is not up to the fucking debate, right? Ukraine should be.
This isn't Ukrainian. This isn't American internal policy issue, and I mean, every time you guys say something about Ukraine, it's not helping. So, like, I'm actually very thankful. Please keep up the good work of not mentioning Ukraine all the way up until
you don't mention South Korea, right? You don't mention American assistance to Japan or Philippines or whatever, right?
We don't
put it aside.
Last time you guys made Ukraine your internal policy issue. You actually made your presidential candidate Trump meet President Zelensky, who he did not want to meet in the first place. I mean, and it made him look stupid. So just like, don't. Thank you, guys.
Don't touch it.
But the point is, something has to change in the way you guys make existential decisions. You know, you should base it off of something that is not cheddar. Because
someone should revise and look closely to the Obama, probably Bush, but Obama-Biden international relations legacy, national security legacy, and look at this from the critical standpoint and analyze what did go wrong, where they could do something different, and maybe they could see a lot of mistakes which could not be done, like those mentioned in this article. And even in this article, they don't put it like mistakes, right? They don't just like, say those are mistakes, right? They say things happened. It's like that, right? When you're leader of the most powerful militarily and economically country of the world, things just happen to you and around the world, and you have no agency to do something about it. Yeah.
Subscribe to the channel. See you next week. Bye.
See you. Bye.
Thank you.